Let's first find a comfortable position. That's it. And as always, take a moment to turn all the attention inwards. Basically, give all of your attention to what is right now happening in your mind and in your body. First, we can become aware of our body and the way that the posture feels to us right now. If how our head feels, how our shoulders feel, and our chest, our buttocks, and our legs. Just really taking that time to check in. And there might be sensations that we just become aware of now. We can then ask ourselves how we're feeling emotionally, seeing if there's any strong emotion, good or bad, that we can feel somewhere in the body. Whatever you're with right now, if it is the feeling or part of your body, the breath, any other signal, we can then start to ask a few like icebreaker questions, as if we're just getting to know that object, as if it's a new person that we're just getting to know. And we want to break the ice, so we ask a few nice questions. We can ask like, how does it feel, that anchor, that signal that we're with? We can see if it's heavy or light, warm or cold. In other words, looking at the details of that object, really getting to know them as if they're a person that we're getting to know. And we we then take a moment to ask our body to be calm, not to forget to relax, that whatever we have right now is perfectly fine. whatever feelings, however clear it is right now, is perfectly fine. We're just here to take a few moments to enjoy, to really settle in before we open up our minds to learn something new or ask questions, relearn things from before. We just want to take that moment for ourselves, just enjoy. Learning and studying, practicing is a very personal experience. And in the end, we want to make sure we're always gentle and soft with ourselves and with our mind. We give it time, we don't rush, and we don't push. That's why before a class, we take that time dedicated to our own mind so we don't rush and we don't push. If you're unsure at any point, you can just gently and nicely ask your mind, hey, where are you? What are you with right now? Are you with my feet? With the feeling that I have? Just gently checking in again when we're not entirely sure anymore. This is your own time right now. We notice that there might be thoughts and narratives that are still very prevalent, and that's, of course, absolutely fine, as we are not pushing or rushing the mind. We just gently and softly bring it back to ourselves again when we notice that our mind is still a little bit wound up with what we did, what we still have to do. or with any other narrative. And then when we feel like we have given our mind some time to settle, to become ready, then we can gently and softly move our body a little bit and open up our eyes. Hello, Claire. How have you been doing?
I'm good, thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy. So happy you can make it, especially since I know you're really busy and everything. So cool to see you. Okay. As always, is there anything that anyone would like to share? Anything, any situation, anything that came up lately in meditation and your practice, or just throughout the day that you would love to ask about or just share?
Can I ask if things get chaotic in life and you sort of lose your practice a bit, like it's still with you, like when things are stressful or in certain moments, but the actual practice has sort of got lost in life and you want to try and pull it back? You got any ideas?
Mm. Mm. I think, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think there is, when going home after an experience like that, like being in Thailand, for example, or traveling and everything, there's, I think for all of us, for me too, when I came home too, there are different challenges that one is then facing. The, the the environment, the system that you're then in is not um, just designed a lot around mindfulness, right? It's not just, okay, we're going to meditate in the morning and then after breakfast it's going to be meditation and class and this and that. And you basically just have to bring your body there and they will do it for you. Um, Absolutely, 100%. I can also relate to that. Um, I can tell you that you don't have to be afraid that you will lose your mindfulness, in the sense of that mindfulness is something that you intuitively do throughout your day. When you bring your mind back to yourself, even when there's a feeling that is arising inside yourself and you're like, oh, this is right now, this is fear, or this is like overwhelmed, this is this you, or you are like, okay, calm down, it's okay, clear, it's okay, we're going to handle it. You're already like being mindful, being aware of yourself and of what's going on. And like you can't ever lose that. Like you can't, you don't have to be afraid of that. Certainly, like there's a part of you, like inside of you, that's always going to like watch out for you and want only the best for you and take care of you. And we call that the good instinct. And like they are still there, still doing their thing, with awareness and clarity. And we the first thing actually can already be, when you're practicing, to become aware that they're there, like to become aware even in the past, okay, which were the situations when like my good instinct or my intuition came up and helped me, and like what did they do and how did that help me in that situation. And that can also already be like a first practice of getting back to awareness throughout your day. Like just noticing when it comes up by itself, giving it that extra boost. It's like, oh, now I'm mindful, that's good. So that's a really, really, really good start. And really like what you're doing right now too, like sharing and like finding people that are like-minded and like that have the same like goals and aspirations, can also really, really help to just like say like, hey, what have you been struggling with? How have you dealt with this situation and that? Like, I wasn't sure how to be equanimous with this. Like, how do you deal with that? Also, like, yeah, with any person of like that you have that trust and faith with, can also be really, really helpful. And it doesn't always have to be the whole hour meditation, or like a big chunk of that you feel like feels too much at the moment. And like, I think you're a real expert as well on like there's so many great ways of like mindfulness, even to take it step by step to really see what you need. Like in Papay, when in the beginning it was just like stressful, and well, closing your eyes, there was so much that came up, so much chaos, that you then just looked at the ants and the ants became your friend. And then in the end you ended up being able to meditate like for, I don't know exactly how long it was, definitely over 1 hour, just from that, from in the beginning not doing like watching the ants and then going to that. So you've already like done it before. That means that it will certainly be easier, because you'll notice the different steps. You'll be like, okay, by the time when you say that you set the goal, you're like, you know what, I want to like get back also into sitting meditation a little bit. I'll start with like 1 minute or something, and you see that that's not possible. You're then like, okay, I remember this. Like, where are my ants? There's probably something else crawling around. And like you've already gone through that. Like you're already kind of like, you have an expert already for the journey that you're on in your inside of you. So yeah, from just a little reminder of the fact that it's there. It's good to see you too. And I was wondering, William, if I remember that there were like questions yesterday that were left unanswered, and something that you wanted to talk about, or is there something else in your practice, in the way that your life is unfolding, that you would like to share or ask about?
Hi, yeah, I was just continuing my meditation. I can't really remember, to be honest, what I was going to ask. I guess that's the danger of not asking at the time. Um, hmm. Well, I could try to think of a question that maybe could benefit us all. Let me see. Okay.
Well, is there something that would benefit you right now? I'm sure if it benefits you, it will benefit others.
Yeah. Let me think about it a little bit. I have to think about it.
Okay, absolutely fair. I'll move on to Mark then. Like, huh? Me?
I have to find the unmute button. I don't have a question, but I'd like to share something that was shared with me this week. The word boundaries has now become a bit of a buzzword in the self-help world. And in talking with an advisor in my men's group, he asked, define what a boundary is. Okay. And I struggled for a second and I says, well, I can give you the textbook answer, but let me give you what I think it is. And after I did that, he came back to me and said to me, and I found this rather profound. He says, but a lot of people view boundaries as a negative kind of thing. You said this to me, I didn't like it, that's outside my boundaries. He said, boundaries are a way of teaching people how to love you. And I found that rather profound. Just sharing.
Thank you for sharing that, Mark.
Carmen, Jimmy, you're muted.
Thank you for telling me. Oh dear. No, Jimmy was just saying to like you have a good point. So I was asking if you wanted to just say something, but I think that's boundaries are how you teach someone to love you. It's like inside you know like what the right way is to treat yourself and to treat others. I think like with reasonability, like anyone knowing that there is a certain way that you then want to be treated, and that might not always be the case from other people. And I guess there are then two people inside of the boat. Like there'll be the other person that will have to be able to hear that in a positive way. That will have to be able to be open to that improvement in their behavior, to love you correctly or to not overstep your boundaries. And it's also about how do you voice it, like how can you explain to other people this is why this is boundary, this is why I want to be treated this way, and I will treat you the same way, because if this is the way that I believe it is correct and I should be treated, this is the way that I should also, like, the respect and the grace that I should give other people too.
Hello, can you guys hear me? I was very interested when Mark shared about boundaries. Hi. It's like drawing a line, just waiting for someone to cross it, and then when eventually they do cross it, then the aversion toward that then prompts some sort of a conflict either inside that is expressed or not expressed out. It stemmed from the fact that before boundaries are set, there are a certain misunderstanding or aversion toward a particular event, unable to then deal with the internal pressure and suffocation from said event. Boundaries are set so that one might, whatever reason may be, to then protect from having to endure something, endure a pain. Now, the bad nature inside other people will then be invited to then break those boundaries, intent or not, resulting in a spark of some kind, a conflict that comes later on. The way my teacher taught me about this topic, because it was asked before, I think like a year ago, is seeing the deficiency in the concept of boundaries, and then point it back to yourself and say, how can then we set ourselves up so that we can then live in any and all situation without any conflict, able to then adapt and adapt and adapt. Even if push comes to shove, we are able to then live with peace and understanding. So therefore, pointing back to the right view of how to then observe the situation. And then people will then might argue back then, oh, how can I then save myself from such and such behavior, or from harm and this and that. Those topics are more about the behavior of the other person. Should they enact it like that or not? In workspace, in family, in relationship, is it to be done, to be expressed to begin with? If one doesn't cooperate, then one can find a solution in which doesn't have to come in contact with that person or that situation. But if push come to shove and you must come in contact, then having boundaries will where boundaries will inevitably be crossed, the best way to fix it is to have right view on it. How can I then change my view on this so that it doesn't bother me as much? So I that's what I want to share about what my teacher taught in regards to boundaries. I didn't know that there's this thing all along. I'm sorry. I was for the light.
I'd like to possibly add to this, or maybe think of some idea. So I think the idea of boundaries is something that we naturally develop or don't sufficiently develop, depending on our experience. And I wonder if we can maybe consider the topic of boundaries or the difficulty in setting boundaries and what that might be connected to, right? So, for example, what is that feeling or discomfort that some people have about setting boundaries? Because we all certainly know people who are very good at doing that, but I think a lot of people do actually struggle with setting boundaries. And Mark, you said it's like a way of telling people to love ourselves. I think it's also just a way of telling people who we are. This is the real me, and I'm a little bit maybe scared of having these. So I wonder if we could talk about that as a concept of discomfort, or something that arises that prevents us from setting boundaries in some circumstances.
Jimmy, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. A life of a monk is a simple life, but never an easy one. It's not where you are always at the mercy of everyone else. You then have to be okay with everything. The place where you sleep, what you eat, what is given, what not given. And so one cannot have boundaries. If not, then you cannot survive in those disciplines. A life without any boundaries, seeing that, having that even then makes life being a monk difficult. So therefore, monks always strive to then fix two things in their practice. Number one is the views that they have, not the right view. When you face a situation, let's say for example, on a subway, riding back home, and then there's this kid who just whine and just run down up and down the aisle, the tube, and you see the gentleman across you, who's obviously the guardian, just being still. You might then confront the gentleman and say, "Hey, can you at least the kid is running around, is disturbing other people. Can you take care of it?" The gentleman then said, "Well, we he and his son is going to miss his mother, who was just then the hospital called because she was in an accident. The kid don't know how to cope with that, have to then whine and then do whatever it is to just take away the fear." So when you then hear the rhyme and reason behind the behavior of the child, the noise that used to bother you, although still loud and echoing in the tube, but that understanding subside the eruption inside of frustration. We example like these, I believe, exist in us when in various situations in our life where we might, from misunderstanding or from not knowing the whole story, something rile up inside. But once explained, understood the bigger view, right, it then fades away, although the situation didn't change. And that's one about right view. The second thing, even though we have right view, now we know what's right, what's wrong, we can't help but feel this eruption inside. And this is where monks recognize that there are something called pollution, dirty, nasty thing in the mind that don't allow our mind to rest easy, be at peace. This is where one should then go and seclude himself to practice meditation, to then clean and cleanse these said pollution. Once cleansed, there's nothing then to rile him up anymore. So those two are the things that is vital in discipline like this, to then be able to then live in all situations, in all circumstances, even if one are being berated or not, given food or not given food, being told to sleep in some place nasty, need to survive. So this is that's why this concept is not only that it doesn't exist, but encouraged to take away, for that we see the consequences or the harm in having so, which is different, as I mentioned before, than correcting someone else's inappropriate reaction. Now pointing out and say, hey, in a workplace, if you like in the rule of law, now we we judge the individual based on a concept of reasonable person, right? Now, what if a reasonable person does this or not? Now, the judge then base the accused on that concept. So if everyone lives their life as a reasonable person, conflict shouldn't happen, or this won't be any trespass of any boundaries. But because one sets something up as a trap, if once broken intentionally or not, a strong desire, a strong aversion happens to that one, that trespass could create conflict. So the question is, why set yourself up for that to begin with? In real life, you can't control most of the thing, but yet put many conditions to then, for what? To hurt yourself or to then expect other to follow the same too. So there are have to then be very clear on different points here about your conduct and how you will and go about life, and also the people, other people too. But then, and also the harm in which boundaries come in it. Did I answer your question, William? About the
Yes, but as usual, I have more questions, but I would let other people ask some questions.
Ask away, William. I have no other questions. You can take the floor. You're good.
Okay. Well, I don't want to get into the weeds too much, but we talked about the idea of aversion to things we do not want, and then also the idea of trying to get the things that we do want, and then with these two acts can lead to suffering, right? These two. But when I think of boundaries, if we were to continue the subject, it does seem in some ways either an aversion or as a method of seeking what we want. There are certainly clear boundaries we have to set to protect our life, like you talked about, right? And maybe even also to protect our peace, because we talked about how something is good or bad, maybe because of how it arises and creates action. So if we know that their action is going to lead to my bad action, maybe that boundary. So I wonder, when do you endure, right? And when do you set a boundary? Is it about that? Is it about how it might influence your own action? Because certainly people are sometimes just obnoxious. And I'm not Larry David. I can't go around setting boundaries everywhere in my life. So, you know, you know what I mean?
Yes. A very good follow-up question, which which point out in an area that I failed to address. Not to say that boundary never exists. Rules and regulation are, in a sense, a boundary that governs the people to not trespass each other. So there is a difference between, but the boundaries in traditional sense of what we're talking about is different from the common sense and common courtesy between how humans should etiquette and how humans should live without conflict. But by then setting overly complex, unreasonable one, that then if you one way that people criticize government is to pass a law in which it is not it is more hindering than helping, although in essence it might, the way they market it in the parliament, whatever it is, might seem nice, but in practice is it a good one or not? You see that a rule of law that works is a boundary that is beneficial, worthy, logical, and applicable to. But it's also a type of law that is not popular. Now, in the US is prohibition, or like the alcohol thingy. I forgot if I learned, right? So we can see in history in many countries there are these different laws or boundaries that are passed that then more often not lead to more negative outcome. So when we set a system, a understanding in our workplace or friend or family relationship, one must set with understanding reasonably too. Lawmaker can't just pass any laws, but have to consult with the higher court or among themselves. They themselves mostly should be a finished law of some sort to then able to then judge the compatibility between the dynamic of social people in general and this and that, how it then works in many aspects of society. So the boundaries that I think most people are struggling with is a boundaries in which doesn't keep reasonably and expect right expectation in mind, then become overly susceptible to being trespassed. The key point is a topic to then rile you up. That's it. Or this guy did this, that guy did that. Now using boundary that you set as a topic to then invoke some sort of emotion, anger, or this or that. A topic to be fought at. Something like that. Did I answer your question, William?
Yes, I think so. Thank you.
When is it law and when is it?
Oh, you asked about when is it law and when is it helpful and when is it not helpful, right? Like in essence.
Yeah, because like let's say for example, I set a boundary and I say I really don't like it when you're late. When you're late, it makes me angry. It makes me upset. So I'm setting this boundary, but I'm also basically setting myself up for disappointment and also emotional reaction. Obviously, there are certain boundaries that nobody would doubt, like don't touch me, please respect me as a person, but there are sometimes we set boundaries that are beyond what you talk about, this idea of rule of law and etiquette. Often we have to set boundaries beyond that for our own sake. But there is probably a line there. Anyways, I'm tired, so I'm not sure if I've completely thought this idea out. But it's kind of just what came up.
William, I sort of feel what you're saying. There's two sides to the boundary. Number one, you're explaining to them, or if ideally, I guess, you're explaining, hey, this is how I want to be treated. Part of that is expressing.
Sorry, Jimmy, your microphone is on.
Sorry, I didn't switch my microphone. Go ahead. I was thinking out loud.
It's okay. Part of that is expressing to them, hey, this is hurtful to me. But part of that is also inspecting, why is that hurtful to me? But I think my point in the beginning was that a lot of people view this boundary concept. It seems to be a weapon now. I just feel like everywhere you read, it's this is a boundary, that's a boundary. People that treat you that way need to be kicked to the side. I think you need to analyze this more as a tool of actually developing a relationship and saying, okay, this bothered me. Please, this bothered me. Don't do that. Respect me. But also then going back to yourself and saying, why did that bother me? What inside of me, which I think is to Jimmy's point, what inside of me is bothering? Why did that bother me? It's a yin yang kind of thing. Am I saying that well? Does that make sense?
Yes, that's very good. And on to then add on top of that, to get to the key differentiation here. One is about the rule and regulation of a system, be it society, workplace, family. There's so many systems that we are a part of. The second one is about your own well-being and lifestyle. how you then have your life. If we talk about don't come late and this and that, if it's a rule of a system, then that rule should be established and that can be said. The rule of the workplace, rule of this establishment or whatever it is. Now those are clear, the boundary of a system. But the reason I bring the topic of how monks live is at the end of the day, it is for our own way of being frictionless in every situation. That's it. For our own peace of mind and frictionless in all situations. If one have a goal, a high goal, a lofty goal of helping other people, understanding that there will be many things against them. Having that equanimity and not having any of it bother you or get to you will allow you to then do what you want to do without any hindrances. Just like those who, in the people, a medic in wartime, they must uphold the highest of unbiased and equanimity. So just so that they can then fulfill their one role is just to help save life, regardless of the side that they're on. It's applied to our character and our virtues. If people trespass, then we have to then what do you call it? Exercise the right given the system that we're in. For example, exercise the right in the workplace, call HR or this or that, or exercise the right of you in a society. With that, we can have authority and we can have some weight to then talk to the other person. But if we talk about your own right who would listen to you? Oh, I don't care. Why? Because you have no right, no authority to do anything. So therefore, then in those cases, when I said that when push come to shove, and the only way is to then find a way to survive for your own well-being. If you can remove yourself, if not, then find the right view or clean out that pollution to make you be able to stay afloat until eventually there's an opening to get out. So those are the two key words that I think would solve this problem and would differentiate very clearly.
I just wanted to say I think this is a really great topic because boundaries are often when many of us think of Buddhism or secular Buddhism, Buddhist philosophy, we hope for a semblance of peace, a semblance of finding that calmness. And it is true, often many monks sequester themselves, yet not so far away from society that they cannot meet them, but they do set a boundary with a monastery or maybe even a geographical space. And a lot of lay people, we don't have that privilege sometimes. I have to go to work, I have to deal with this person, I have this relationship. If the Buddha constantly had somebody screaming at him or pushing him around, it would be hard for him to reach the wisdom and enlightenment that he did, right? And so I think it's kind of an interesting thing that maybe is sometimes ignored or taken advantage of, because if we do ABC, certainly this is going to help us, but there's this base concept of creating that space. And that's what I think is a really good topic that you brought up, Mark, and it's interesting. Thank you, guys, and thank you, Jimmy, for your insight.
Even in ancient time, imagine you are a religious leader at a time before Buddhism exists. Many great gurus, many great teachers at a time, until this one new discipline pops up called Buddhism, taught by the Buddha. And then overnight, thousands and thousands of people flocked. Off from your discipline, go to the other one. Your income resource all gone. At that time, Buddhism was the number one enemy of the rest of India, because then No? So not to say that Buddha doesn't have anyone that he all the time, not all the time, to the point where he have to teach many monks, especially his secretary, of how to then have right view on these people. Like, okay, and then this and this and this. So, but then Buddha said, even in and especially in the manifest, the principle in which to spread Buddhism, the Buddha say, seek no harm. We're not gonna change other people's view, not gonna force them no harm. So therefore, go there as frictional as possible. If the villager tell you to turn left, you turn left. They tell you turn right, turn right. Be able to then be a person who no one can target you. No one can hurt, even if they try to, because there's nothing to hurt you with. Even if they hurt you physically, if it doesn't get to you, then the hurt them like, oh wait, that's not what I expect. With that high virtue, those around you who see a monk who is not faith, not read anything, naturally gain faith. Like, oh, this person must be someone who not regular person, not someone who then shine above the rest. And that's how monks are able to then gain the trust and the faith very easily. For that, they are able to hold that virtues to the highest and impress people different from other discipline who are not as well developed in some aspect. So at the end of the day, it comes up to how can then we like I mentioned, we can't decide many things. So how can we elevate our wisdom and capability so that we will be as frictionless as possible in life, where everything in life doesn't bother you anymore. So
I also just want to say, I just realized, of course, the Buddha had many problems. Somebody tried to kill him, sent an elephant to kill him. There was that, I just thought of an example of maybe the Buddha setting a boundary, which was, there was that famous thief or robber or killer, I can't remember the name. And then he's trying to, he's chasing the Buddha, and the Buddha's just walking, and he keeps saying, stop, stop. And then, I don't know, this is how I read it. He says, no, you stop. Don't you see what you are doing? Da, 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 da. So sometimes maybe setting a boundary can actually be a way of giving love, not just showing people how to love us, but like a child telling them how to better behave and act in society.
Wait, not Hans.
Oh yes, Mark, you have your hands up? Nope. Okay.
No, I was just saying that is exactly the point. Is the yin yang. It is not just saying this is how I want to be loved. It's also showing you love. It's trying to develop that relationship. And the point was, there's so much out there about using boundaries as like stone walls to push people away, as opposed to this is what the guy was trying to say to me. It's not just pushing people away, it's actually pulling them in. It's a relational item.
That point should be echoed more often. And to be honest with monk, if you ever study or be ordained before, monks holds 227 precepts. The written one, but the unwritten rule is more than 1,000 rules that the monks have to follow. I guess who gave those rules to the monks? And you say, oh, the Buddha gave it. Actually, it came because lay people complained to the Buddha. Our monks is like this, monks is like that. So not only that we are encouraged to not have boundaries, but then we are encouraged to then be in boundaries of other people too. When I was a monk, I can't run because 2,500 years ago, someone see a monk run and they don't like it, so they complain to the Buddha. Oh, great! Now I can't. When I chew, I can't bite it off like a banana. I can't chew it. I can't bite with my teeth. I need to break it with something else. Because in the past, in India, they have rice ball. So if you bite on the rice ball, everything drops. And people complain that, hey, the rice dropped. So we'll say just eat it whole. That's the second one. And you see 227 of these, then over 40 years period, monks have to then David, but for the purpose of not to then anger the lay people so that they can then come in and study. So not only that we don't have our own boundaries, but we are forced by other people's boundaries too. So this how, but yet we live because we know that people are looking for a way off pain or suffering. That's why they come. So for looking for higher purpose or higher goal, we see this thing as a non-issue, not something that is worthwhile for that lofty goal. So I think with that said, we should then set our life to be same as the monk. Not only that we don't have our own thing going on, but then we can survive when people then are forced upon us their own boundaries, and we able to live in that one. And that is the life that there's no way that you won't come up with this conflict inside, because what can they do to you? All right. Any more questions? Yes, sorry.
No, this isn't a question per se, just I wanted to like share some things because it's such like an interesting concept. One thing is last year, I kind of went to someone in my family because I kind of wanted reassurance about like a situation that I was going through. And when I kind of brought up that situation, it kind of like caused anxiety on them. So they weren't then able to reassure me because they were coming from a place of anxiety. But I also didn't outrightly say, hey, can I please have some reassurance in this? I kind of went it in like a roundabout way. And then they weren't able to assure me. And then I felt such like strong annoyance and frustration. And then I came away from that. And at first my thought was, oh, I need to lay a boundary down. And then I was like, no, actually, kind of like Mark said, like, let's investigate this actually, like what is causing me the upset. And it was, I had an expectation that they would reassure me, and I hadn't even communicated to them that that was what I needed. So they weren't able to do that because they didn't know, because they're not a mind reader. So that wasn't fair on me to put that expectation on them and then get mad internally when they weren't able to fulfill that need. And then I realized Aishang Jimmy had said something last year that was so interesting too. And he was saying, like, we can cause our own suffering if we have a friend who's very generous with money, but they're maybe not that, and that's their strong suit, and maybe they're not so strong suit is empathy. And then if we go to them with a problem, kind of wanting or needing empathy, and they can't provide that, we almost get annoyed at them rather than, oh, was that the right person to go to, or could I have gone to Claire, for example? Like, maybe Claire's really empathetic, and maybe Mark's the person who I go to for like if I needed like money to help me out. So it's about like using the tools around you as well, like who are the people who, what are their strong suits, and then going to them for that, and not going to them for something that's not their strong suit and then kind of blaming them. And an interesting one about time, William, because I have a few friends who have ADHD, and so they're not able to like utilize time very well. And instead of getting annoyed with them, what I do is I'm like, okay, so Harry said that we're going to meet at 6:30, so we're really meeting at like 7:30. So I'll bring my book and then I'll just read that, and I'll have like 30 minutes to like an hour to be able to like read my book before Harry comes. And then Harry comes and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, and he's really flustered because he's like, oh, I lost track of time. And I was like, no, I had a feeling that you'd try to leave the house and then you'd do one thing and then another activity would distract you, so I knew that realistically you were coming around this time, not at 6:30. And then he was like, how did you know that? And I was like, oh, I've just like noticed the sort of pattern, like you're not able to do that, so that's okay. So sometimes accommodating for other people's needs as well, rather than it. But I do appreciate that when life's really busy, or like if someone's really late and then that like postpones you for like appointments and things like that, like understandably it can be a bit frustrating. But sometimes just like allowing that extra like need for that person and recognizing they're not able to like time manage well, or they're not able to organize, so like I'll remind them or be like, hey, should we meet at like 5:30? So then you really want to meet them at 6:30, but it's actually realistically always going to take them an hour, so maybe you like sometimes do that as well to sort of like adjust for them. That's all I wanted to share.
Yes, we can't let our boundaries supersede somebody else's boundaries. They also get to set boundaries too, right? That's hard for me. to do. That's hard for me.
I think to close out the conversation, I want to bring it back to how monks eat food. I was saying, he said, we eat food to live, not live to eat food. That's one thing. And second thing is, we eat anything because of that, right? So why make life difficult by restricting yourself to this or that, or putting stuff up, making life difficult to live? Not only difficult for yourself, but difficult for the other dude living next to you. That they have to do this, do that, right? So I mean, life is tough enough already. Make things easy and simple, with boundaries or with everything. Just for some people are tired already, like they're going through life enough. Like, I just want to make life simple, please. So, all right. Can I have 3 minutes to use the restroom break, and I'll be back.
Is Carmen still there? Did we?
I don't know. I have to sign off, guys. I have a boxing lesson I have to go to. So I wish you all well, and I will see you next time.
Thank you so much for coming along, Mark. It was great to see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You guys are gonna probably start meditating now, right? I guess.
Yes,
You
yes, probably. But thank you
Unless-
so much for your question, and thank you so much for sharing that, Zoe. That was really, really great. And yeah, there's always I love like when people are sharing and asking questions, and like how much you can still learn and also like be reminded of. Like there will always be like situations in my mind, for at least, I will come up and be like, oh, this is what I can do better. And that's really, really great. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
So, Carmen, how long are you planning to stay in Thailand? Are you?
Yes. I was in Thailand already for 9 months. And then I left for 1 month to go and visit family, which is I think around the time when you started also being really, really part of the group, like coming every day. Like I think since the first time you came every day. I
was gonna be busy today, but then I wasn't, so I was like, okay, I'll join. I'm really tired. I went for a long hike today, so I'm a little bit out.
Oh, that's so nice. But yeah, I wanted to really say that I'm like, wow, I think like you're the person with like the most impressive streak ever. Like,
Oh, really? Well, yeah, there will be probably times where I just won't come for a while. We'll see. Yeah. And also for me, it's also because I'll be leaving in June from Korea. And realistically, I don't know when I can join after that. Unless, I guess maybe, Zoe, you started a later meditation. So I could probably join that one.
I'm
Getting up
definitely.
at 6 every day, I don't think so. I
definitely.
like that. I like that life, but it's hard to really.
No, it's very fair. I'm definitely hoping to do at least one like per week so that people have an opportunity to.
Sure.
Where
Yeah.
I tend to say everybody a little bit better, or at least more people. I've been very exhausted this week, so I've been taking care of my body and not overdoing it.
Yeah.
So that's the offer one, but hopefully soon, because it would be really great. And like you're able to do these now, which is amazing. But we'd also love when you can't do these to like accommodate. But yeah, I would definitely add on to Carmen and just say I really enjoy the questions that you ask. I love the way that you like word them, and it's just, yeah, they're so brilliant. So thank you for always sharing. Please don't feel like when it's like, oh, I have more questions, that like you can't not share, because this is very much like your space too. And in reality, we're all like, that's good, because we're probably thinking the same thing or similar. So it really always opens the conversation. So thank you for doing that.
Sure. Yeah. I like to ruminate. So no, I don't. But not everybody likes that. And like Jimmy said, sometimes, you got to keep it simple.
Yeah.
And sometimes I like to go deeper, but then to what extent? I don't know.
Yeah.